The history of heavy.
Let's do this thing. Hello and welcome to episode 43 of the History of Heavy podcast, the show that throughout the year of 2025 has traced the chronology of heavy music across genres, song by song, with your co-hosts, myself, Michael Huntsman, and that guy right there, Big Daddy Dave Lieberman. Hello, Dave.
Hi.
Hi. Tonight is our last episode, David, of 2025, and our recap of said year. How you feeling?
Feeling good. Looking back on the year of a lot of music. This is the year that we started this project, and couldn't be happier about that. It's got me a lot more focused, a lot more on music. I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and so it's nice to get back into audio music listening.
Yeah, hold that thought, because that's a big part of the way I want to start our conversation tonight. But I also want to acknowledge, we did begin this project this year, and we began it with episode 1 focused on Link Wray's Rumble, a song that came out in 1958. We capped the year of 1972 a couple of weeks ago when we talked about Black Sabbath's Volume 4. The intent is to get us to current day. We have a long way to go, my friend.
Yeah, we did this on purpose, though. This is a labor of love, and it gets us together to talk about music. And so the both boxes are checked. We get to talk about music, and we get to listen to music. And oh, by the way, if anybody's listening and enjoys it, that's great too.
That's very well said, and that's exactly right. This is an excuse to hang out with you every week. This year, because of this podcast, is the most I have seen you probably since we were in college in any one given year. So that's cool. And it's just, it's an excuse to focus the conversation, talk about something we love, both discover new things, both discover new ways of hearing things, bands we've never heard, songs we weren't familiar with, all of that stuff. It's been a joy, and we'll do it for as long as it is a joy. And if it gets boring or dull or repetitive or whatever, we'll stop. But I don't see that happening anytime soon.
I mean, it's been great so far. And yeah, I mean, this is the kind of social media that I can sink my teeth into, because we're being social, and this is a multimedia endeavor. So this counts. I'm counting it.
It does indeed. It does indeed. This will be probably our least focused conversation that we've had across now 42 episodes. This our 43rd.
That's saying something, folks.
That is saying something. We have talked at great length, 40 and 45 minutes about 3-minute songs on a regular basis on this program. But this one, I think, is going to be a little more scattershot, and that's kind of by design. Every social media platform, every media outlet, every music website feels obligated to publish their year-end list. We were just talking a minute ago about Spotify Wrapped. I consume Brooklyn Vegan and Pitchfork and Spin and Decibel and all of these, all of these different year-end lists to find things to listen to that I might have missed, or to validate my opinions about things that I did listen to. This is going to be some of that, but it's also just going to be about us recapping our relationship to music in 2025, which frankly, at our advanced ages, I think it's kind of interesting. You spoke on it a second ago. You had a different relationship with music in 2025 than you have had in years past, and this podcast prompts us to think about music in a different way. But I'm also very curious, and I ask a lot of people in my lives about this regularly. Is how do you consume music? What role does music play in your life on a day to day basis? So maybe we can start there, Dave. Actually, let's not start there. It would be irresponsible of me if I didn't at least ask you if you had a cultural corner tonight to talk about the year, broadly speaking, of 2025.
I don't have a cultural corner because, broadly speaking, I've been hiding from 2025. I think that might be the cultural corner statement of the du jour. Um, is part of this podcast is to disengage from 2025, and it's been very helpful, and I've been very grateful to have something positive like this podcast, because if I look around, there is positivity, but I see a lot of negativity out there, and it's difficult to swim those waters without drinking that salty spray, and I don't want it. So this helps keep me balanced, and the cultural corner comment is that I'm trying to disengage from 2025.
Amen, brother. I on our History of Heavy TikTok channel, I did a best of 2025 episode, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a few minutes. But at the top of that episode, I said, and I will repeat here, 2025 was a shit year on a global level, on a national level, on a local level, and frankly, on a personal level. And this, apart from the Dodgers winning their second of two back to back World Series championships, pretty shitty year for me, broadly speaking. Broadly speaking. But this podcast was one of the highlights. Having this to look forward to, and music to bury my head into, and to talk to you about it every week has been great. So with
Amen.
that said, let's get into the music of 2025. And again, back to referencing our age, I think a lot of what this conversation will not necessarily circle around records that came out necessarily in 2025, but what we listen to. We've talked a lot about, your Sir Lord Baltimore's as an example, or the Edgar Winter Group song Frankenstein, songs that we kind of discover, bands or albums that we neglected for most of our lives until this year, are fair game for tonight's conversation. But I want to start again more broadly, and I'm curious what role music plays in your life kind of on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis, how you consume it, where you consume it, different kinds of music, all of that kind of stuff. And if you want to talk about how this year was different because of the podcast, great. But
Yeah.
wherever you want to take that, I'm very interested in it.
Well, thank you for that question. That's a good way to get this conversation rolling, I think. Um, my relationship with music has waned in the past 20-ish years. I remember music being very important to me when we met. And I remember feeling, and I may have even said at some point, that I thought that every moment had an appropriate soundtrack.
Mm.
There was some kind of music that made sense for every moment. The As I've aged, I have turned less to music and more to spoken word. And I think that a lot of that had to do with several years ago, having commutes and listening to the news just out of habit to know what was going on in the world. And I felt like I wanted to be informed. And it was a little bit more balanced, it seemed. There was a time. And that has continued for a lot of years, and now I'm lately have been trying to disengage from news, not fully news fasting, but limiting my exposure because that's helpful for my mental health. And so what I've found has been audiobooks, and I've really gotten into listening to a lot of audiobooks, partially because for me, listening to music is so connected to emotion. And we've talked a lot about how music can be an expression of emotion or also a connection to emotion. The performing of music is an emotional experience. So when you're in a performance, when you're watching a performance, you're there, you're sharing that emotion, that energy, both with the band and with the crowd. When you're playing music, you're expressing an emotion. And when I'm listening to music by myself, there's an emotional connection to that. And it's so difficult for me to conscientiously and intentionally pick my emotion that I often stumble when it comes time to pick music. And so that is one of the main reasons, dear listeners, that I end up at Black Sabbath a lot because it's good. I know it works. It's comfort food. I've said many times that the first two albums are one of my best friends. It's a relationship I have that is a standby default all the time. So my relationship to music has been like that. This year has been different because of our podcast, and because I am now listening to music when I'm riding my motorcycle, and that has done two things. It has gotten me back into enjoying music for itself. It also gives me the opportunity to get familiar with music again. Listening to music multiple times helps me connect with it more. I hear it better. I hear it differently. I hear more about it. So listening to kind of a short list of playlists on my motorcycle gives me hours at a time of re-hearing the same songs. And so I've gotten very more familiar with a lot of music that was outside of my norm. And this podcast has been great for thinking about music and discovering music, and sharing that discussion with you has really increased my affection for the audio form of music. And so I'm not a huge live music guy. I always fall into bouncer mode. I've worked in clubs and bars, and so I just stand there and look for the troublemaker, and it's not it's not comfortable for me.
Mm-hmm.
um, and so but you took me to a lot of live shows at one point, and I missed that because I don't think about it. You would just call me on a Wednesday. Hey, what are you doing tonight? I don't know. Okay, meet me at this place. Oh, okay. And I get there and it's Jello Biafra's 50th birthday, or it's Queen of the Stone Age, or it's, you know, Elliott Smith or whoever. And okay, let's go. Uh, so this podcast has been a refreshing way for me to reconnect with music in the audio form and help balance some of the other audio formats. My
Yeah.
current job that I recently got, I'm working with my hands a lot. So, and there's this air compressor kicking on all the time in the background. So I'm wearing my noise canceling headphones, and listening to an audiobook in those circumstances is really disruptive.
Mm,
But listening to a playlist is a lot easier because
love it.
the intervals are shorter, the song intervals. I don't have to concentrate on it, and it can just happen in the background, and I can take my earphone out and it can keep running, and it's okay. But a story I'm listening to, I'd miss something that's important for the plot, so that it just doesn't work as well. So I'm listening to more music at work as well now. Long answer.
No, great answer. Thank you for that. I think your I think your understanding of your listening habits and the whys and the whens and the how comes are all, I'll just say, abnormal. Like I don't think most people have. You're intellectual about many things, and you're very analytical. So I think your understanding of that, I think, is a unique Dave trait. But I don't think the way your music listening and appreciation has evolved or devolved, depending on the word you choose, I don't think that's unique. I think that is a very common side effect of aging, of as people get older, that young passion that you have, that emotional connection you have, the appreciation for the familiar, the comfort food, as you described, Sabbath. I think those are things that, specifically generations prior to ours, that was the typical behavior, that as you got older you kept listening to Zeppelin or whatever your band was. You didn't start listening to the Strokes or Geese or whomever. So I'm curious about your immediate friend group. Do you see your relationship with music, and maybe you don't necessarily know, and there's no rote answer necessarily for a large group of people, but by and large, are you seeing that sort of, I listen to kind of what's on Sirius, but I'm not that worried about the hot new band on Pitchfork this week kind of thing?
It's really interesting. I hadn't thought about that at all. But now that I am thinking about it, music doesn't really come up in
Mm,
friend group scenarios. And first of all, friend group scenarios don't come up
mm,
nearly like they used to, right?
sure.
Um, when I'm with friends, it's typically not group. It's much more one-on-one or a couple of people at once. Um, and we're talking there, and the discussion doesn't get around to music typically unless somebody is currently going to see something or has just seen it. I recently saw a performance of Danny Elfman with the San Francisco Symphony performing the music of the Tim Burton films. And so that spawned some conversations with a few friends about how, you know, different people's relationships and memories of Oingo Boingo or their their relationship with Tim Burton music. Um, but it's hard for me to remember the last time somebody said, "I'm going to go see this band. Do you want to come?" Or even having it come up because my friend, like, I don't spend a lot of time now that I'm thinking about it. The time I spend with groups of people is at work or the motorcycle club or a motorcycle ride or my family. And none of those threads, none of those groups have a music thread
Mm.
attached to them. Somebody has to bring it in very intentionally.
Yeah, my sort of core group of, 4 or 5 friends, like my closest friends, uh, are all music obsessives. But the thing that I have noticed, and there are a few exceptions to this in terms of my friends, but what I've noticed is those friends of mine that are still very current in music are very deep into a genre or a style of music. Most of my friends that have very broad listening habits, which is how I would describe myself, although put me out of it for a second. Those friends that have very broad taste in music, and eclectic taste in music, don't necessarily aren't necessarily following the latest new releases or whatever. But those friends that I have that are hardcore into punk or hardcore into jazz or what, like that one thing or those couple of things, they are on top of the latest thing. And this guy that
Yeah.
was the bass player on this made a record with this guy over here, and here's, so that I don't know what that is, but I think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. What is your? I want to get you on the record with these questions as well.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you describe your arc of music listening and your current place? Because from an outside observer, you have been very dedicated to music as long as I've known you, and I
Mhm.
don't know you to not be steeped in it at all times.
Yeah, it is. Apart from other human beings or my pets, it is the single most important thing in my life. And that includes not just listening to music, but in most years, 2025 aside, in most years, going to see live music, reading about music on websites, listening to music podcasts. It's just it's kind of my religion, to sound very cheesy and trite, but that is kind of true. It's the Ozzy lyric, rock and roll is my religion and my law. That's kind of what it is. Um, so my I sort of have something music related happening all the time. I'm either, at my desk doing whatever I'm doing and music is playing, or I'm walking the dogs listening to a podcast about music, or I'm sitting down with headphones preparing to talk to you about a specific song, or I'm in bed reading my book before bed, and 5 times out of 10 that book is music related. So it's I don't know what that is. I think it's an attachment to youth. I think it's a security blanket. I think it's the comfort food you described. It's sort of the thing that keeps me. I went and saw Marty Supreme today for the second time, which is the new Timothy Chalamet movie, directed by not by Josh Safdie. We saw it on Christmas Day, and I loved it so much that I wanted to go see it again. So I went and saw it again this afternoon. And what I did immediately when I got home was started to build a Marty Supreme playlist, because music plays a big role in the film. But that's how I relate to it. Is how
That's
did the
totally your reaction to things, to
right?
stimulus. It's like, oh, let me make a playlist about that thing that I had happen or that's going to happen or that I'm thinking about.
Dodgers won the World Series. I made it a Dodger World Series playlist. Like that. I don't know what that is.
Well, you know what? That actually leads me to the next question, which is if you had to rank one and then two, what would be number one and what would be number two? Your love for music or your love for the LA Dodgers?
oh,
You're on the record
oh,
now, by the way.
if I could only have one, I would have music. But
Okay.
but but I sort of put the Dodgers in that category, the families and pets category that I mentioned before. Like this is not a podcast. This is, but the Dodgers were handed to me by my father when I was very, very young, and they were handed to him by his father, and then I handed them to my son. So they are more important to me than Christmas,
Yeah.
for whatever that's worth. Yeah, that's I mean, sports is a whole nother weird thing, but I do have that. I think it's a very male, stereotypically male. It's this kind of collecting, sort of deep knowledge, wanting to be the kind of subject matter expert, nerdy. Some people have it for comic books, some people have it for motorcycles, some people have it for history, some people have it, if there's movie buffs, whatever it is.
Totally. Stream of
Um,
consciousness.
yeah, it's sort of how it's music is kind of how I make sense of the world and who I am in the world, which
Yeah. Yeah.
sounds kind of crazy, but that's really true.
No, it doesn't sound crazy at all. In fact, I feel like it's a very um, compatible way to process. I think that media and art is a very common, compatible, reasonable, logical, and healthy way to process. And music is an art form, but people consume or process through poetry, through visual art, in all different mediums of sculpture and painting and performance. dance. I think that all of these forms of art are, because they contain a connection to emotion, help us process. So it's not that it doesn't make sense, it's that it makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yes, thank you. This is going into a little bit of high fidelity territory now, but
Bring it.
I do think it's that the creative expression, whatever it is, and our consumption and appreciation of the creative expression is the single most important thing about the human experience. That
I
it's
mean,
not the work we.
you might say that it's like the defining human. It's the thing that defines humanity,
Mhm.
right? Like, yes, there's cognitive thought or sentience, but it's this connection on this emotional level through expression and sharing that expression and different ways of sharing that expression that really feel special about the human experience.
100%. That and the opposable thumb.
Well, okay, that too. Two
Okay,
two opposable thumbs up.
I think all of that stuff is really interesting, and we talk about this kind of thing as we're talking about various songs and artists, and we'll continue to do so. So let's keep that thread going, because it's, I mean, honestly, it's this podcast is a perfect illustration of it, right? It's, I love you, you're one of my dearest friends, and I'm using music as my way to stay connected to you. you
Right,
know
right, right.
it's like, well, let's just get on and talk about Iron Maiden, and that way Dave will know that, uh, I
But
love
in
him. And
that, what I think that's so great because it just feels weird to pick up the phone and call you
yeah.
every week, or have a video connection chat with you every week that's freeform. That just feels weird. But I have been so much more grounded and fulfilled this year for our weekly connection because I know it's coming. It's this regularity that is, it brings us a structure that isn't, it brings a structure that's enriching, that isn't depleting in any way, that's constructive, and that's outside of the orbit of everything else that is my life, which is, uh, largely good. I'm in a pretty good place, and I have a lot to be grateful for, and regularly express my gratitude. I make sure to connect with that. But this is one of the biggest things this year has been the enrichment of having this connection time, and the fact that I wouldn't have a way to do this without music being the backbone of it. It just makes it seamless, easy, fun. And then, oh, by the way, there's all this music.
Right. Now, by the way, perfect segue. Perfect segue. Let's
Let's
talk
talk
about
about
some
some
of that.
music.
Yeah, let's talk
Yeah.
about some music. And we won't belabor this. What I thought we would do, and we didn't do a lot of pre-production on this, so I won't hold you to anything specific. But what I thought we would do is we just kind of go back and forth on some of our favorites of 2025. And again, those can just be things that we dug into or discovered or listened to a lot of or whatever. You can say 5 Black Sabbath things if you like. But I thought maybe if we each mentioned five or so, and let's try to avoid, this isn't a hard and fast rule, but let's try to avoid things we've already talked about or bands or songs that we've already talked about on the pod, unless it's all Black Sabbath all the time. That would be fine too. So
So, yeah.
let me start.
Yes, please.
And as I mentioned a little bit ago, I made and posted a TikTok video to the History of Heavy podcast TikTok channel last week about my 25 favorite heavy albums of the year. On that list are a lot of albums that I saw across all of those best of year lists that I mentioned with Pitchfork and Brooklyn Vegan and Rolling Stone and whomever. Those including Deaf Heaven and Agriculture and Lamp of Murmur and Deftones and Primitive Man and Ancient Death, and there's a whole bunch of them, and they're all great. But all those records have been getting tons of accolades, so I won't bore the audience who is already digging deep into heavy music. They know those or can go find them on their own. So I took 5 from my list of 25 that maybe are a little bit deeper cuts that you probably don't know. One of them you might, but I think a lot of people probably don't. So I'm gonna, as I take my turn, I will just go through 5 of those, and maybe I'll drop in some of the other ones as the conversation goes along. And I'm going to start with a band that ended up being number 8 on my list of 25. That's probably a little high for this record, but this is a record by a band called Sanguiaugabogg. I can't ever say this band's
Is it
name.
like Gaelic or something?
It's the name of the original singer combined with the Latin word for like vomit or something.
Okay.
Um, they are a death metal band from Columbus, Ohio. Their record this year is called Hideous Aftermath. Just to set the scene a little bit, they are a 4-piece, 2 baritone guitars tuned way the fuck down to like A or something insane. They don't have a bass player because when you play that low, you don't need a bass player. They have 195,000 monthly Spotify listeners. So, kind of in the death metal world, they're big-ish. A lot of people know this band. And this is their 3rd record. I really like this band. I like this album a lot for how absolutely ridiculous it is. It is so over the top, goofy, and serious that I can't help but love it. And Brooklyn Vegan really said it best in their review of the album, which said, the whole thing is a total onslaught that delightfully asks you to check your nuance, tastefulness, and maturity at the door, which I think perfectly encapsulates this band. I mean, their name alone is completely insane. I can't even, I'm not the king of pronunciation, as we all know, but their name is insane. Their music is insane. It's the classic kind of Cookie Monster growl vocals, but it's so thick and intense that I listened to the record a whole bunch this year, and it just made me giddy with laughter every time. It's great. So
That's wonderful.
that would be my first one. Yeah. What about you, Dave? What do you got?
Um, so let me get this Sabbath thing out of the way right now, because otherwise
Hell yeah, do
it's
it.
gonna be a thing. So I will just say that on my Spotify wrap this year, I am in the 0.3 percentage of Black Sabbath listeners,
Yeah, you
ladies and
are.
gentlemen. In the top, within 1% for like the 3rd or 4th year in a row since they started doing these things. I don't know how long this goes back, but I haven't had Spotify forever. Um, of my top my top 100 songs of 2025, in the top 10, 5 of them are Black Sabbath songs. Um, I continue to reach for Sabbath. It's the comfort food. I just listen to a lot of Black Sabbath. Unashamed. Um, I I will just leave it there. I listened to a lot of Black Sabbath this year, and it's because of this podcast. I got out of my first 2 album like rut, pattern, habit, stream of consciousness, and gave the next 2 albums a whole lot of airtime. Much to my pleasure. It was great to reconnect with these other old friends of mine who are in my best friend group, the Black Sabbath best friend group.
Yeah, I mean, no notes, no notes. Yeah, the Black Sabbath. We will get back to them very soon on the show. I think we've recorded probably 6 or 7 episodes already of the 42 that were specifically about Black Sabbath, but more to come on Sabbath for sure. So I'm glad we at least touched on them, as we do every episode. Okay, number
Check
7.
check it off the list.
Check it off the list. Check it off the list. Number 7 on my list of 25 this year. Honestly, would have been 2 or 1 if I would have made the list over the last couple of weeks and not sooner. This is a band called Greet Death who released an album this year called Die in Love. These guys are a kind of shoegazy slowcore band from Flint, Michigan. Die in Love is their third record. They have 83,000 monthly Spotify listeners, and I am completely obsessed with this record. This record is incredible, but it is not really heavy. I don't know that it necessarily fits on this show. They
Hang
probably have.
on. I want to interrupt you just for to mention for this episode, since we're talking about what we've listened to this year, we're a couple of guys who like a lot of heavy music and are coming to this heavy podcast sharing what we've listened to this year. So this podcast is focused on heavy music, but this episode is going to kind of expand the horizons a little bit and explain that heavy music is not our only way of connecting with music. And I think one of the reasons that we enjoy heavy music so much is because it's in contrast to all the other music we listen to.
Very well said. If this show didn't have heavy on the title, my list would be very different. If the layperson came to the 5 records I'm talking about tonight, 4 of them definitively would be considered heavy. This Greet Death record is not, and it probably has more in common with Death Cab for Cutie than it does the band Death. But man, there is something about this record that I was in Los Angeles a couple of weeks ago. I was walking on the beach in Santa Monica at like 9 o'clock at night. It was pitch dark. I was 5 feet from the Pacific Ocean, walking toward the Santa Monica Pier in the dark, listening to this record. And it's all I could do not to burst into tears. Like, this record really, really moved me. The single from this record is called Country Girl. Everybody go listen to that song. And if that song doesn't move you, that's fine. Greet Death is not for you. But man, there's something I absolutely adore about this band. So Greet Death would be my second choice tonight.
Yeah, right on. All right. I do want to talk about a couple of heavy bands that I have given some heavy rotation to. But before I get into that, I'm going to do the palate cleanser bands that I've gotten way into
Okay.
that I do use as palate cleansers to help balance the heavy stuff. And that is Khruangbin and Glass Beams. And I got turned on to Khruangbin. I found Glass Beams on some YouTube thing and just fell in love with the video because the video has this really analog appeal to it. The visually, it's got all these gold brown tones. They're using all this analog equipment. It just drew me right in, and then the music itself was just very um, hypnotic. And on this, then YouTube starts recommending things as they do, and Khruangbin came up, and then immediately fell in love with them. And it turns out, every time I turn around, somebody's like, "Oh, you just heard of them?" So, and I think now in this year, they've just become very much more known. So those two bands got a lot of. In fact, I think they were my number 2 and 3, or 3 and 4 on my Spotify rap. Sabbath, of course, was number 1, and I think that Budgie was number 2.
Oh wow.
Just because they're on a playlist, a motorcycle playlist, and we spent time doing an episode with Guts, and I just have been really enjoying a lot of Budgie. So apparently, um, but anyway, Glass Beams and Khruangbin are my palate cleansers that I gave a lot of listening time to this
Would
year.
you say that energy? I don't know Glass Beams, so I'll have to check them out. Khruangabin, you might have even turned me on to them. I was late to them too, and got to see them at the Hollywood Bowl in 2024. And they were, yeah, they're an amazing band. Again, I think a lot of
Yeah.
people know that band, but would you say that your that is more consistent with your regular listening habit, Black Sabbath side, apart from the heavy stuff?
Yeah, uh, I kind of I have to say that I split my listening into almost equal parts, 20 equal quarters. A quarter is heavy. A quarter is this type of Khruangbin glass beams. I would even put Air Moon Safari album in
All
that.
time great.
There's this cool, um, not lo-fi. I don't know what the category
It's
is.
like
It doesn't.
what they call slowcore now. It's like the C in the Cake and Calexico and yeah,
Lexico is another one that comes up on these playlists. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Also, Los Hermanos Gutierrez come
I was
up
just
on this
listening
as
to them
well.
today.
Yeah. So that's another 25% of my listening. And then another 25% is jazz, which heavily veers towards Latin jazz. And the other 25% is funk, like black exploitation funk. Um,
We're gonna get to James Brown, little payback coming up here
yeah,
pretty soon.
yeah. I like stuff with a little stank on it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man.
Um, but and this is where the crossover comes back to, because Sabbath has heavy and the bass of Geezer Butler, which I put in the flavor profile of funk almost, that rhythm, that groove. We talk about the groove a lot. That's why Sabbath sticks so well with me, is because it combines 50% of my musical flavors, whereas the other 25% are pretty distinct.
It's funny. I was how I ended up in this rabbit hole. Maybe my daily music habits I mentioned earlier are the cause. But I ended up watching this long form interview with Flea recently, where
Oh
he was
wow.
talking about his bass influences, and he listed off tons of Jocko and all the uh, Graham Central Station, Larry Graham. I don't know why I couldn't think of his name. Stanley Clark. All the regular, like the funk guys and the soul guys, and then he said Geezer Butler.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like God bless you, Flea. God bless you. Your band sucks, but God bless you.
Oh well.
Okay, let's move to my number three, which again is on my heavy list, and this certainly qualifies. This one was number 4 on my 25 favorite heavy albums of 2025. This is a band called Boneflower that I only recently discovered. They released a record called Reveries this year, and these guys are a trip. They are a three-piece, what I would describe as post-hardcore, because I can't think of a better way to describe them. They are from Madrid, Spain, and this is their third album. I have a lot of third albums on my list for some reason this year. It's a 38-minute runtime, which is again perfect, and it is this crazy mishmash of textures and styles, everything from like death metal riffing to shoegazy swirl with hardcore vocals. There's some flamenco guitars in there, but they do some really interesting thing where they will have like black metal screeching vocals, like that, that vocal over like a punk kind of get up, like emo core kind of clean vocal singing the same lyric, the same vocal melody, but one guy is screaming and the other guy is singing melodically, and it shouldn't work and it just does.
Hmm.
And they're just a really cool band doing something that's pretty original. And I was like, wow, man, that I say, and I've only lived with this record for maybe, a month or so, maybe 3.5 weeks. So, I don't know if it would be that high on my list if I had more time with it, but so far I've totally enjoyed it. So Boneflower from Madrid is a band that I recommend people check out. It's pretty interesting shit.
Right on, right
Yeah.
on. Um, One band that I've really been enjoying lately, and I spent a lot of time with this year, probably more time with them last year, but it's a good opportunity to chat them up. It's a band called Early Moods, and I don't know where they're from. I don't know. I never know too much about these bands. I always appreciate that you know a lot of the history behind the band and the makeup of the band and the DNA. A lot of my music listening, I let Spotify guide. And so I'll be listening to something and it runs out and then something else pops up and I look at the name. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And then I go back and just listen to that. And that's as far as I know about the band is the name and that, oh wow, I keep coming back to this and this is pretty good and I like this. It's the magic combo of heavy but rhythmy and melodic enough to have body to it, but not enough to be poppy. And there's a number of bands that show up on my end of the playlist Spotify playlist, the continuation of the vibe. But Early Moods is one that I really hooked into and keep coming back to, and I recommend them a lot.
Well, here is the blessing and the curse of modern day music consumption. I I had never heard of this band, but apparently I have because if you see me looking over here, I'm taking notes or clicking on links to as about things we're talking about. I am following this band on Spotify, so you must have mentioned them to me at some
I
point.
know that I know I
Yeah,
mentioned them to you
I'm
specifically.
like, oh, I better check them out, and they completely got lost in the shuffle. So I will definitely go back and dig in, not only on your recommendation, but the description of said band is, I mean, this is fucking catnip for me. Early Moods is a doom slash heavy metal band from Los Angeles, California, that pays homage to bands like Candlemass, Witchfinder General, Pentagram, Trouble, and Sabbath. Like, yes, yes, please shoot it into
Yeah,
my veins.
yeah. It's an all-star. It's the all-star team.
We will all we've already talked a lot about Sabbath, but Candlemass, Witchfinder General, Pentagram, and Trouble are all bands that will be coming on future episodes. So stay tuned for all of those. That sounds awesome, and I will have to get back to this band that I am following already. Um, okay, my both of my one and two are unassailable, and they would have been very high on my list, regardless of how much higher or not Greek Death and the like would have crept. My number two is my favorite new band, maybe apart from Greek Death now, that I discovered in 2025. Man, I am really, really into this record. This is a band called They Are Gutting a Body of Water. These guys are getting a lot of play. They have 264,000 monthly Spotify listeners. They put out an incredible 28-minute record this year called Lotto. It is their fourth LP, and man, I just absolutely fucking dig this band. The best explanation, and I should shout out Chris Ryan on The Ringer, who interviewed their singer on his podcast on The Ringer, which is how I became aware of them and got me interested. These guys are from this band. They're Getting a Body of Water is from Philadelphia, and the description, I to me, it's if you take Slint's Spiderland, one of my favorite records of all time, and you take latter day Fugazi, like if you think about the Argument era Fugazi, and you take those two things and put them together, that is kind of what They Are Getting a Body of Water sounds like. So they're kind of shoegazy with some kind of jaggedy, kind of post-hardcore, weird tempo stuff like Fugazi. They do some like talking, like spoken vocals, like Slint does, where a guy is telling a story about something over the top. So they're kind of moody, with definitely some heavy parts, but more sort of like if you think about like more quicksand than Gorilla Biscuits, to use
Okay.
the Walter Schreifels of it all to define more Fugazi than Minor Threat. But just a very cool band. So I would highly recommend that folks check out Lotto by They Are Gutting a Body of Water. It's a very cool record and only 28 minutes.
Not a big commitment. Uh, it's an appetizer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, boy, I've got some interesting things in my list that I've listened to. Who should I talk about? I think I want to talk about a band that you turned me on to that got a lot more play last year, but I want to talk about them is Peth. Um, and the funniest part about this is that in the text thread, you said, you should check out this band. They're really heavy. They're really good. Kind of a Sabbath ripoff, but they do it well, so they're good. And then I did the thing you did with Early Moods, and I put it on the thing, and I forgot about it. And then I discovered it all by myself, and was like, "Holy shit!" And I texted you. I was like, "Dude, you got to check out this band. Have you heard of them? They're kind of a Sabbath ripoff, but they do it well." And you're like, "Dude, scroll up." And it wasn't but a few messages before that you said almost the same thing. Um, so I don't know what, for whatever that's worth, it's a fun little anecdote, but Peth is, I think, a solid choice, and I like them a lot. They're not so heavy that they bring you down, but their heaviness is, they also have a little bit of groove. Um, Again, their heaviness is like a seasoning. It's done very well, I think, and I really enjoy the playlist that I've got of theirs.
And they only have one record, is that right?
I think
Merchant
so.
of Merchant of Death.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the song titles say everything you need to know, right? Dwarven Knot, Amok, Abolish the Overseer, and Stoned Wizard.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, of course.
right.
Yeah, perfect. Perfect. All right. Yeah, I'll have to go back to them. Another example. Yeah, I completely forgot all about this man, so I will have to go back
Yeah,
and check them
they're
out.
fun.
Yeah,
They at least a couple of their songs deserve to be on most playlists.
it's a good way to say it. And that's all bands really need to accomplish these days, right? Just get onto a playlist, man. That's it. That's
That's
plenty.
right.
Okay, my number one for any listeners of the show, it's probably predictable. It's Swans. It's they put out their 17th record. Michael Gira is now 70 some odd years old. I think Swan's first record came out in 1981. So they have been doing it despite all of the effort. They still only have 197 monthly, 197,000 monthly Spotify listeners, but they are all dedicated hardcore listeners. If you know, you know. Um, they are, I mean, it's a new Swans record. I only went to 3 concerts in 2025. It's the least amount of shows that I have
What?
gone to in a year since, yeah, that's the year I've had. Um,
Ugh.
I think I think I think it's the least amount of shows since I was 15 that I've gone to in a year. But Swans was one of them, and it was absolutely, it was like going to church. I tried to drag you to it. I got you to I Hate God. I couldn't get you to Swans, but it was okay. It was a religious experience. Again, if you know, you know. Swans live is kind of a legendary thing. They're incredible, loud as fuck, great. The one complaint I have about the new record, which is called Birthing, if I didn't say that, the fucking record is an hour and 55 minutes long. There
Okay.
are and there are only 7 songs on the record, so several songs cross the 20-minute mark. It's a lot. It's a lot. Um, some editing probably could have been useful, but it's still number one on my list. Birthing became sort of my morning background music. It sort of was. It just kind of played. I didn't spend a lot of time, frankly, listening to the record beginning to end or reading the lyrics or whatever. It just kind of played. And there were certain parts that there's a song on it called "I Am a Tower," which was kind of became the song that stood out to me the most. But it's a great record. It's got all the kind of vibes and energy that you expect from this band. Apparently, this is the last record they are going to do with the big sort of sonic bombast, and they're going to go in a different direction. Who knows? But if you like Swans, you already know this record, and if you don't like Swans, there's probably other records you should start with. The Seer, I would probably recommend, but I love Birthing, and I'm glad they're still putting out records.
Right on.
Yeah.
Um, Boy, there's some good ones in here, and I can't get to them all. I do want to give kind of a honorable mention to Mount Salem, who I like a lot and listen to quite a bit. Haze Maze, which I really like their song Lies. It like I listened to that once, so that was my number two song this year. I listened to The Wizard the most and Lies from Haze Maze number two.
That's saying something.
Um,
They
it is
are cool.
and
I
quite
have
it's
kept up with them. They're great.
they're great. But I do want to talk about Slomosa, who I discovered last year, but I spent a lot of time with last year and this year. I think they're from Norway. They might be from Sweden, but they're Nordic. Uh, I dig their vibe. It's a again another like heavy band, but they have a little bit of a groove. The vocal, there's something about the vocalist's presence that offsets the music and complements it and is a little bit different. It's clean vocals, you can hear what he's saying, and it's not growly and it's not high pitched, but it's not deep. It's this it's an interesting vocal register that I just don't hear a lot. And there was something about that I connected with. But just the way that the songs are put together and they build up and they flow really well. I've really enjoyed Slow Mosa.
It is confirmed they are from Western Norway,
Okay. So, almost Sweden.
drawing inspiration from Caius, Elder, and Black Sabbath.
I mean, yes,
Yes, please.
that's exactly what they sound like.
This is another band that you mentioned to me earlier in the year and got lost in the shuffle. So I am definitely going to that. The biggest gift you gave to me this year was Space Slug.
Oh, dude,
Yeah,
you didn't know about them?
no, I didn't. Yeah, like you definitely turned me on to them, and great story. And then we can start to wrap it up because we're starting to push some time here. But we are living in this kind of country house while my wife has successfully convalesced from some leg surgeries. She's all good, fine, everything's great. But I was walking my dogs in a local cemetery. There's an old cemetery kind of outside of these apple orchards that I walk the dogs through. There's old like 1800s tombstones in this graveyard. It's a very cool little graveyard. And I was walking through it one day, and a guy that was parked in a pickup truck, just kind of like maybe eating his lunch on a break or something, had parked in the cemetery, saw me walking the dogs, and stuck his head out and yelled at me. And it turned out I was wearing a sleep shirt, and he was like, love sleep, they're great, whatever. We spent 30 seconds bantering about music, and I said, have you heard of Space Slug? Because I happened to be listening to them shortly after you turned me on to them. He's like, no, I have to check them out. Great. 3 weeks later, a month later, I'm walking the dogs up the road, and this truck pulls up really sharply as I'm walking the dogs. I'm like, who the fuck is this guy? That same dude pops his head out of the car window. He's like, dude, great call, Space Slug. They're great. I'm like, right on, brother. So we're just paying it forward, man. We're just trying to pay it forward.
Love that. I love that. I'm so glad. And it's funny because weren't you in Wrocław, Poland recently, or were you just in
I
Warsaw?
was.
Yeah, yeah. You went and saw a show in Wrocław.
Yeah, I saw a great Beelzebong, who is a great instrumental kind of doom
That's right.
band from
Yes, they
from
show up
Warsaw,
on
who's
my
great.
these playlists too. Beelzebub.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
great.
So Space Slug is from Wrocław, and I don't know how I got turned on to them, but I got turned on to them a while ago on Bandcamp, and was like, what is this?
They rip, dude. They're
And
great.
bought their music. That was the first music I've purchased in a long time. I've been streaming for years now.
Sure.
And I was like, this is great. I will pay the $10. I'm buying this. This is cool.
Count me as a fan. Okay, look, we could go on and on. It was again a long year. We've got lots of stuff, but I think that's a pretty broad smorgasbord under the umbrella of heavy or not. I think we covered a lot of ground. Is there anything you wanted to hit that we didn't touch on tonight?
No, I like that there's this endless. The one thing I will say is that the Spotify algorithm concept has allowed me to discover more of the same, right? I'm listening to something, it shows me something else that is that same flavor. And that algorithm has gotten better and better because a couple of times while I've been at work, I put on the kind of sludge. I have a playlist called Sludge, which is all these bands that we've been talking about, and it runs out. There's, I don't know, 40 songs on it or something, and it'll run out, and I don't know, right? I'm like, oh shit, it's been like 6 hours. I've been listening to this. This is not 6 hours of music, and so Spotify knows. So for there's controversy over the Spotify leaders and the whole concept. I mean, I heard some horrible story about King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, how they pulled their music and now there's some AI version of their music, and it's not good.
There's a whole bunch of
So
Godspeed You Black Emperor. I mean, there's a bunch of great bands that pulled their music from Spotify because Daniel Ek, the
yeah,
CEO, gives money to military developers, and like, yeah, his money isn't necessarily going to the best places, and it's like add him to the fucking list. It
well,
not
and
that
I
that's
read
an
some
excuse,
quote
but
that he had about just more or less, oh, what are anybody going to do? We own this, we own the conversation, and so it's troubling. And I want to make sure that I balance my praise for them with the knowledge that I am supporting this thing that has a double edge to its sword.
I don't mean
But
to.
that's just how the world, like, that's the line I'm walking anymore.
Yeah,
I can't avoid it.
this is making too light of it, and I don't mean to do that, but to simplify it, you can love Rosemary's Baby and hate Roman Polanski. you know?
And that's where I'm at. Like,
Yeah.
that's where I'm at. I mean, I love James Brown's music, but that dude's a piece of shit. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's no other way to characterize him.
All
And
right,
I
let's
think you
let's
can say this about a lot of people. It's
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
enough said.
All right, man. Well, shitty world aside, yay music. That was great. And next week we will be back to our regularly scheduled program. Our first episode of 2026 will take us to the year of 1973, when we will talk about Alice Cooper's Halo of Flies. I say this every week, but it's one of the conversations that I've been very much looking forward to, and hearing your reaction to Alice and all things shock rock in the 1970s. But that will do it for 2025, man. It's been fun so far. I'm looking forward to next year.
Me too. Amen.
All right, my brother. Well, thank you as always. Thanks for listening, everybody. Stay heavy.
Okay, thank you. Bye.